So this was supposed to come out a week ago, but because of some issues I had with YouTube, that was not possible. It's not as timely as I would have liked it. The first chunk of season 5 has been out longer than was my intention for when this would get out. But since it's basically about how I felt about the show after the end of season 4 and how that feeling had not faded as we got to the start of season 5, I think it's still relevant. I hope so anyway. Not having anything up last Saturday was the first time I'd missed a week in I don't know how long, and it's kind of murdered my analytics, so throw me a bone here. You know, I've felt like the only occupant of the I cannot stand the big bad of Stranger Things club for a little while now, so I'm either about to just have it emphasized to me that I am truly the only member, or I'm about to make a whole bunch of new friends. We'll see. Yeah, Stranger Things. So at time of recording, the start of season 5 is not out yet. By the time you see this, the first chunk of season 5 will be out. So obviously, everything I say will not be impacted by the new episodes. That's assuming I even watch them. I might not. And if I do, it's certainly not a particularly high priority for me, to be completely honest. But regardless, Stranger Things. I used to really love this show. Season 1 is, I think, in a lot of ways, immaculate. It is incredibly well-paced, a stunning atmosphere, really great limited use of the effects that they have. It sort of just exists in the 80s without necessarily like shoving 80s in your face all the time, be like, remember? It just feels a lot more organic. It feels like watching an artifact from the time in a lot of ways. It is just a spot-on, terrific cast. The creature design is really great. The entire concept of the Upside Down is wonderful and mysterious and like, what is going on? And it's just a stellar season of television. Second season's okay. It opened up a few things. I do like the Mind Flayer. Conceptually and even in terms of execution, I like it well enough. But also, I kind of felt the strain of, there's a whole bunch of characters who you have hanging around simply because they were around last season, but you don't know what to do with them, so they're just kind of here. Mike. But on the other hand, we got Steve having his character arc to becoming the world's best babysitter. So I will always be grateful to season 2 for that. Season 3 kind of leaned really hard into the fact that people are in this for the 80s nostalgia, and that was really where they started going, 80s! They started doing it a bit in season 2. Season 3 is a lot on that front. That having been said, I think the shift in the threat is weird and visceral, and I do enjoy that quite a bit. We get Robin introduced, who is a character who I adore. More great stuff from Steve. It's a solid season. It's my second favorite season. Season 4, okay. The stuff that is good in season 4 is great. Largely, I'm talking about mostly the stuff with Max and also Eddie. They are great. There's a few other good bits here and there. Will's conversation with his brother, that works well, but for the most part, I was either bored, frustrated, or exasperated watching season 4. And more than anything, the thing that I could not stand was the introduction, or I suppose the reveal, given the nature of this guy, of the big bad Vecna. I hate this guy. I cannot stand this character. This is not he's a villain who I hate, therefore it's an effective villain. It's not a love to hate it thing. It's like, I hate it. I hate Vecna. I hate what Vecna does to the show, to the concept, what it retroactively does to the earlier seasons. I hate him. I think Boy, it's hard to think of too many other villains in stuff that I otherwise like that tank as hard for me as Vecna does. I think the only other one who comes close, and I guess get ready for the second real big hot take of this video, Vicious from Cowboy Bebop. No, not the terrible live action remake, the original. I hate him. I love Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop is great. And Vicious felt like he was designed to be the single most generic, all-purpose anime villain ever. You could literally slot him into nearly any anime action show that has ever been made, and he would work about as well as he works in Cowboy Bebop. And in a show that has so much amazing stuff and some really astoundingly good one-off villains, Vicious is the only one that recurs. I hate that guy. Every time he shows up, I groan. So, boy, now that I've probably lost everybody by doubling up on the hot takes, let me be real clear as I sort of vent about why Vecna made me not care about Stranger Things anymore. I really do want to emphasize, I'm talking strictly about my perspective. I am not here to debate or convince you. If you like season 4, and if you like Vecna in specific, that's fine. I know a lot of people do. And in many cases, some of the things they like about him are the exact things that I hate about him. So it is a matter of taste. This is by no means one of those objective criticisms. Not that that's a thing anyways, but even if it was, this definitely wouldn't be it. I am not here to convince you that Vecna sucks. I am here to tell you why, for me, I feel he sucks. Because this is also kind of in a way serving as a preemptive explanation for why I may not get around to watching and or reviewing season 5. And again, if I do, I am in absolutely no rush. And I might not get around to it at all. This might end up being a Umbrella Academy season 4 situation where like I have liked the show prior to this, but I didn't get to it right off and then started hearing about how bad it was. I'm like, oh, I guess I won't watch that. If I start hearing bad stuff about season 5, I probably will not bother at all. If people say it's good, maybe I'll try it, understanding that I cannot stand what they have built a shocking amount of the show around at this point. Before I can get into why I really detest Vecna, I need to talk a little bit about what I really loved about the show prior to him. Because I am very much attracted to, in a entertainment sense. Boy, I could have picked a better word there because, yeah, I see all the hear me outs that put Vecna on there. And honestly, I kind of respect that more than his use in the actual narrative. You want a slimy, fleshy guy who has control of tentacles? You do you. I ain't judging. But anyways, I have a pull towards unexplained eldritch cosmic horror. That having been said, I find that it is done well a minority of times. A lot of people, I'm not going to say they don't get eldritch, but I think for a lot of people, eldritch is a general flavor, whereas for me, like, it's something that I really like to feel enveloped by. I like things, and it does not even necessarily have to be horror. Like, there are things that I think are eldritch and unexplainable in a way that is not, strictly speaking, the Cthulhu big cosmic monster thing, although that is kind of the go-to. One of my go-to things that I point to at this moment is Babylon 5, which I watched for the first time a year or two back. Well, finished the watch. I had a whole podcast with Jesse Gender. It's a lot of fun. You can listen to the back catalog if you want. But there are a number of entities in that, groups, species even, that we get some information on, not a ton. And there's even a couple of instances where I'd like, can we remove that? I actually don't want to know that. But for the most part, I really like how the Shadows, the Vorlons, or the Babylon 5 movie Third Space, I really like how those things are handled. And this sense of, okay, we're not going to over-explain these because we kind of can't. Like, the concepts are too alien for this to even be properly explained to you, so we're not even going to try. We are going to give you enough of an understanding to basically get what the people in these situations would get and understand about as much as they would understand while having full knowledge. There is way more going on than that, and you will never fit it in your head. That's sort of the core appeal for me. And honestly, a slight divergence, that's almost like a spiritual thing for me, to be completely honest. The funny thing about eldritch and cosmic horror specifically is that the notion that's horrific is this idea that the universe is incomprehensible. It is too big, too vast, too weird, and too uncaring for any one person to even try and wrap their head around it without going mad. A lot of people find that scary. Lovecraft definitely found that scary. I don't. I find that beautiful. I think the idea, in fiction or in reality, that the universe is too great, too grand, and too strange to ever be fully comprehended, to ever fit inside of one person's head, or even the collective brain space of an entire species, I think that's incredible. I absolutely adore that. And I am down for it to be used in a horrific sense, because there is something just very real feeling about this notion of this ancient, powerful, indescribable thing that you have encountered and also does not care about you. That's sort of the thing. You know, there's this notion of, what is worse? That God knows that you exist and hates you, and that's why your life sucks? Or that God doesn't even know you exist at all? And for a lot of people, the latter is scarier. Because if you are targeted, at least you are acknowledged. And the Upside Down, as first introduced, was very much that. It came across as a place that didn't care. It was its own thing. It was bleeding into the world of Hawkins, but it didn't care. It wasn't trying to necessarily engage in some specific plan, and if it was, we were never going to understand it. It just is. The Demogorgon just is. The tear in reality, the nature of the Upside Down, and the fact that it's a reflection of Hawkins, it just is. Why? You will never know. Why is not the point. The point is, it's here, and what do we do about it? Now, Season 2 introduced a certain amount of intentionality with the Mind Flayer, which I did like for the most part, because even though it gave us something that had a more identifiable intelligence as we would understand it, it still was going about things in a very strange way, and its goals weren't clear. Yes, the characters are operating on the assumption that it is here to conquer based off the D&D version of the Mind Flayer, but that's there as a metaphor.
Analogy. That's what you're worried about. Fine, but an analogy for understanding whatever the hell this is.
Regardless, they're just comparing to something that they do understand so that they have any way of trying to figure out how to go about dealing with it. The Mind Flayer itself need not fully map on to what they are saying, but it's the best they got and they move forward on that basis. It clearly had a plan, but what it was actually trying to accomplish and why, we didn't know. And I, for one, didn't need to know. Its plans could literally have nothing to do with Hawkins or humans. All that's incidental, or maybe those are just components of something that it's doing that's like, finding the ingredients you need. Hawkins is just the salt being added to a recipe for all intents and purposes. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy that sense of this is grander than you will ever know, but it is also an immediate threat. So what are you going to do about it? This focus on a grand threat that is way beyond the people trying to do anything about it, and the small stories of people who are just going to do their best in a horrifying circumstance with a terrifying force. I love all of that. And then Vecna showed up to give it a face and a voice and a goal. And I hate all of it. I remember when I first saw Vecna show up in the show, my initial reservation was just like, oh, he's just kind of a dude in prosthetics. Like, don't get me wrong. The practical makeup effect that was put on that actor is very impressive. And props to him for going through I think it was 3 hours to put that stuff on. And then it took an hour to take it off and have to do a full day of filming in between. It was like 20 pounds just weight on his head. All the power to him. And all the power to the makeup team. But I'm looking at that and going, that's a guy. I saw the Demogorgon. And yeah, there's sort of, a humanoid kind of bipedal. But then the head was its own thing. It was like, okay, I don't know what that is. The Mind Flayer. It was smoke, but it was tendrils. But it was a mix of bodies as it came together in season 3 to try and exist in the real world. Like, all of these things are grotesque and they're distinctly non-human. That's definitely a guy. And that initially, I was already like, ooh, I don't know about this. I had some hope because I was digging his MO. I'll give this to Vecna. I loved his MO. The entire thing of haunting people with severe senses of guilt and making them relive this horrified, even worse version than the reality of the thing that is holding them back. And then like the twisting of the bodies and just things snapping. Like that's good stuff. I'm here for that. It's not even the stuff that he does necessarily, but it's him as a character. The moment the show lost me and I realized, oh no, this is bad, was when he started talking.
I want you to join me.
I never wanted to hear the Upside Down talk. And yes, you could argue that the Mind Flayer talked through Will a bit, but I was able to headcanon that as being Will's brain trying to format these thoughts into anything that could be understood. Even as it got to season 3 and Billy was being used as an even more direct conduit for this thing, I, for one, chose not to take that as direct one-for-one, this is the Mind Flayer speaking. I took it as this is the Mind Flayer using what humans do to communicate, because this isn't something that it would ever bother to do otherwise.
If you can talk to a thing, you can comprehend it a lot better. You can negotiate with it. It becomes personified. Becomes maybe something you could find common ground with. That's not what I want from something like the Upside Down. And it's not even a matter of like hating the voice in specific. I know the voice, again, really does it for some of you. I see you, monster fuckers out there. But the fact that he talked at all, that really was the moment where I was like, oh, I'm going to hate this. Then he kept talking and kept talking and kept talking. And it's either in these huge, overblown, generic, evil for evil's sake villain arch statements.
It's time for your suffering.
Or, these sort of, I've been watching you. He either sounded like a low-rent Freddy Krueger when he was targeting people or when he was monologuing to 11 about the frickin' lore drop that was. God, do I hate that scene. That was just classic villain will not shut the hell up. And then we get into his backstory and find out who the hell he is, and everything gets even worse. So we have our flashbacks with 11 when she was still under the care of Papa, who shouldn't have been brought back. Like, he did so little. They should have just had it be Paul Reiser's character. I forget what his name was. They should have just had him in the guy's footsteps. Him actually coming back had almost no meaning. I did like the moment at the very end where 11 faces him down. The dude finally dies and gets out of the damn story. But I don't think it was worth it for that alone. He added nothing to bring him back. But anyways, the flashbacks and her and one. And we get the full backstory of who Vecna was before and who he was before he was part of these experiments about psychic powers. And he basically boils down to just another bad seed. Now look, when it comes to motivations of villains, it can be dicey. I know it's become very in vogue to give villains understandable motivations, but they take it too far. I'm definitely over that. We've seen that go way too wrong, way too many times. And while I'm not going to say that it is a higher caliber of writing to have a villain who just does what they want and it just revels in being the bad guy, we are kind of missing that in a lot of our media right now. You could argue that Vecna is that, but the problem that I have with that is the more backstory you give it, the less interesting it is. This is why the Joker shouldn't have a definitive backstory.
You know how I got these scars?
Killing Joke is a perfectly fine story. It should not be treated as canon. It frustratingly is an annoying number of times, either by fans or DC or both. But somebody like the Joker shouldn't be explained. You can't explain that. There is not a rational explanation for somebody like that. So trying to offer one and or basically going, he was evil since he was a little boy. I'm like, okay, great. That's why even say anything? Like, ultimately, I really mean that. If that is your ultimate point, like, they've always been just evil. Like, okay, then just don't tell me anything. Just have them here, have them be evil, and I'll make my own assumptions if I even feel like making them. Because if that's your answer, unless you are actually exploring the concepts of nature versus nurture or anything, which most of these things don't in any meaningful way, but unless you're doing that, just don't talk. Just say less. So we have Henry, as a young boy, getting inspired by Black Widow spiders because he's just kind of weird in the head that way, I suppose, and discovering he has psychic powers and using them to kill his mother and sister. Why? Because he's evil. And then getting taken in to be experimented on and studied and have his abilities suppressed because of how dangerous he was. And then 11 frees him from that suppression. And he just starts killing a bunch of people again. Why? Well, because humans are bad.
Hawkins will burn and fall in the rest of this senseless, broken world.
That is the same generic crap that I have heard over and over and over again. I think that that's an angle that at this point is really well worn and it's kind of hard to justify. I suppose you could if you really dug into it, especially if you had a particularly alien threat. But again, he's not alien. He's a dude. I don't mean alien like outer space, but I mean alien in that unknowable sense. But no, he's just a guy. He's an asshole. He's a murderer. He's clearly unhinged in some way that I don't even want to try and diagnose, but he's just a guy. Wow. And then we get his whole backstory of him showing up in the Upside Down and starting to be changed by it and forming the Mind Flayer. Before Vecna, it was just this cloud. It took on its spidery form because that's what he wanted it to take on. Which means that for all intents and purposes, the Upside Down, this strange, unknowable landscape, this alien ecosystem, this bizarre biome, is completely under the control of just some fucking guy who has psychic powers and is an asshole. Now, before any of the Stranger Things superfans jumped down my throat, assuming they're even still watching, yes, I am aware of Stranger Things' First Shadow. If you don't know what that is, it is a stage play that appeared on the West End and Broadway. I have looked into it. I'll certainly say this, looks technically incredibly impressive. I'm stunned at some of the stuff it looks like they pulled off on that stage. But regardless, it deals with Henry Creel at a young age. It also has a lot of that kind of fan wank nonsense where Bob and Joyce and Hopper are also around because we have to connect it to the characters people know and love, even though it adds nothing to do so. But anyways, regardless, there are implications within that Henry might have been twisted by the Mind Flayer and being even possibly to some degree controlled by it. I acknowledge that exists, and I'm going to completely disregard it. That is in no way evidenced in the episodes of the actual show itself. Is First Shadow intended to be canon? Possibly, but that's not what we saw. That's not what the vast majority of audiences will ever see.
And yes, it is distinctly possible that when we get to season 5, this might be something that gets changed in some way, that the Mind Flayer is actually in control of Vecna, even if Vecna doesn't fully realize or appreciate that. That, to me, won't really help, even if that happens. Because Vecna still took over the story to become a direct personal threat. He was still boring as hell in every scene he was in. And even if we remove the issue of he is in control of all of the Upside Down, that only makes it better in the strictest sense because it will be slightly less egregious to me. But at my time of speaking, that's what we were shown. It's one of those things where even if it gets quote unquote corrected later, that doesn't fix the fact that it ruined my experience when it happened the first time. But this is all getting speculative, so right now let's just stick with the fact that what we saw in season 4, everything implied and indicated that Henry took control of the entire Upside Down.
That was you. Always you.
That's what we are shown. That's what the strongest implications are.
That is taking something that could have been a boundless, epic, universe level of we will never understand all this. And now it's just, well, it's basically this dude. Is there still weirdness? Well, yeah, sure. It existed before him. The Demogorgon seemed to exist before him, but now it's answering to him. So that's now less interesting. Is all the mystery gone? No. But like the notion of how do things survive here? Are these independent animals? Are they working together? Like, is it this? Is it that? You narrow it down and like, not only are we basically doing a hive mind, it's just this one dude. It's the frickin' Borg Queen all over again. If you don't know the complaints about the Borg Queen in Star Trek, the Borg were introduced in Star Trek Next Generation, and they are a phenomenal threat. Excellent villains. These mechanical, cybernetic, part organic, part machine beings who just take over areas and then assimilate people that they find into their own collective, taking their knowledge, taking their technology, and making them like the Borg at the same time that the Borg improves itself. It is a wonderfully eldritch concept. The very way that this species works, that they're a parent society to the degree they have it works, is completely unlike anything that we have here on Earth. And then in the movie First Contact, they gave them a queen. And it worked at First Contact because the performance was really good and the movie around it was pretty good, but she did kind of ruin the Borg. Because now instead of being this collective hive mind, how do you even deal with this thing? Because there is no one individual at the head of it. It is truly this collective mass. It's a freaking embodiment of the Grey Goose scenario. There might as well be a nano swarm. Oh, but there's a queen. There's this one lady who is in charge of it, who acts a lot more human than the rest of them. It just made the Borg more comprehensible and less interesting. And Vecna is that to a factor of 10, at least. At least for me, he was. Because he didn't just wreck a species, he wrecked an entire plane of existence. Made all of it less interesting. And like, if you're going to start answering questions, you glossed over a lot of basic ones. What did he eat? What did he drink? How is he not just dead from exposure on this place? Oh, well, we're not going to answer that. It'll be a mystery. Look, you suck the mystery out anyway. So don't use that as an excuse to dance around the logistics. That was legitimately how detached I was by the time we got to the flashback. I'm watching him, in sort of his half makeup between how he was before the transformation and full Vecna, walking about, and I'm just sitting there thinking, what is he eating? Is there potable water here? How is he surviving? He's just that powerful and that evil. Oh, how frickin' nuanced and interesting. And the thing is, I understand that this was something that the Duffer Brothers wanted, the creators of Stranger Things. They said that, they had wanted a villain who could talk for a while. I think that was a fundamental misunderstanding of what it was that was even good about the setting they created. But it's also their creation. They can do what they want with it. And honestly, in a lot of ways, I look back at season 2, and while I can praise the Mind Flayer, the Demodogs were kind of the early warning. It's like, okay, we've got the Mind Flayer. It behaves differently. It acts differently. It seems to have a higher level of intelligence. It's cool. It's different, and I don't fully understand it, which is a bonus for me. And then what's the other species you're going to introduce? Oh, it's basically just Demogorgons, but smaller. Oh, really? Does everything just have that pedal head over there? Is that what we're doing? I didn't like the Demodogs. They felt very uncreative. I wanted something distinctly different from the Demogorgon, which, again, the Mind Flayer was, but the Demodogs weren't. So I didn't care for them. And yes, I understand that I think it is actually flatly implied that they are just juvenile Demogorgons. So what? There's no other native species other than the freaking Demogorgon? It's just this one thing? Do you think if you opened a random portal somewhere on Earth that only one specific species is something that would come through? Really? Again, you could argue to me that it contributes to the weirdness, like, oh, but if they are all like that, isn't that weird? Like, no, because to me, the weirdness is appealing by its endless possibilities. When you just keep showing me the same freaking creature, as much as I love the Demogorgon, that's not expansion, that's shrinkage. And I think that's more than anything what Vecna did. He made the Upside Down feel small. And now I care so much less. Again, this could very well just be a me problem. I know there's plenty of people who like Vecna. And again, that's fine. But people who like Vecna, they take a different kind of enjoyment from the show than I do or probably even did at the beginning. It's kind of like, in some ways, when I think about Lost. Now, for the record, I've said this in the past a few times. I didn't watch all of Lost. I watched the first season of Lost. And I actually really liked the first season of Lost. But I stopped. I didn't watch the rest. Because what I loved about the first season of Lost was how few answers it gave. It kept opening up new things. Every answer seemed to just bring more questions with it. And I really enjoyed that. And I didn't want to keep watching later seasons and watch them narrow down on fewer and fewer possibilities. I liked the expansiveness of it. And I knew that as time went on, they'd have to either start focusing on fewer things and stop adding new possibilities, and or they'd have to start answering questions. And I didn't really care about the answers. Now, yeah, by the time Lost finished, how many answers it actually gave, not as many as a lot of the fans wanted, but that's the thing. The people who kept watching it were the people who wanted those answers. I stopped watching because I didn't. To me, the perfect ending of Lost would have been they get off the island and they never know what happened. They never know why it was like that. They never understand why they got stuck there and they can't ever find it again. That to me would be a perfect ending for that show. But that again would be for me. For other people, oh, most people would hate it. Never would have been a hit. If like that was what they were doing going in and people understood that. So I understand that I am an outlier. The level of mystery that I like retained. It's not an absolute. Like sometimes the mystery elements can clash with other aspects. I'm going through that right now on the current thing that is on my podcast feed, which is Frack This Podcast, watching Battlestar Galactica, also with Jesse Gender, if you want to know what we're currently up to. But at time of recording, the most recently recorded podcast that we had, that won't be out yet by the time you see this video, we kind of paused and talked for a little bit, and I had to kind of talk through like what is it about the Cylons that even as they are bringing in more weird stuff, which is stuff that I like, why isn't it working? So like there's still ways to thread this needle. It's not like you can just throw mystery at me and have it work. You have to actually properly build stuff around it, and you have to, there's a needle you have to thread. So don't take it as an absolute from me that mysterious is always better. But mysterious was very specifically what I liked about this show. And Vecna killed it. So there's my thoughts on Stranger Things and why I'm not excited for season 5. What are your thoughts on all this? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. Don't worry too much about it, though. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I'm just running the meetings. Until next time, this council is adjourned. And now to shout out my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lutfula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Ulrich, Loki Eris, Tracy Scrabbit, Pal Barabajoggle, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and starting this month, I'm going to shout out 3 random supporters from the other tiers. So this month, my thanks to Tommy Castronova, Tim Price, and Caramelized Catherine. If you want to hear me shout you out, check out the reward tiers on the Patreon. You know, I put them one on each shoulder, they consolidated immediately. So, thanks, guys.